In a cramped Silicon Valley cubicle, a brilliant software engineer was about to submit what appeared to be an ordinary resignation letter. What started as a routine farewell email took a shocking turn when corporate executives opened a document that would unleash digital devastation across their entire network. Marcus Thompson wasn't your typical disgruntled employee. For 12 years, he had spent his life creating revolutionary algorithms at Nexus Technologies, known for his methodical precision and unwavering dedication to innovation. When he embedded malicious code into his resignation letter's metadata, he had no idea he was walking into a moral labyrinth that would consume everything he claimed to protect, crafting a digital weapon that would expose systematic corporate theft at a cost that would haunt him forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The livestream quality was pristine, 4K resolution, perfect. Lighting, every detail of CEO Brian Mitchell's confident smile rendered in crystal clarity on Marcus Thompson's monitor. Marcus sat hunched in his cramped cubicle, surrounded by towers of outdated hardware and empty coffee cups, watching his life's work being presented as someone else's revolutionary breakthrough. This proprietary algorithm represents the future of artificial intelligence, Mitchell declared to the room full of investors, his hand gesturing toward a sleek presentation slide. Our team has spent years developing this groundbreaking technology that can predict market trends with unprecedented accuracy. Marcus's fingers tightened around his stress ball until his knuckles went white. The algorithm Mitchell was describing, line by line, the neural network architecture, the innovative data processing methodology, even the specific mathematical optimizations, every single element had been born from Marcus's mind during countless 18-hour days 2 years ago. He'd written the initial code in his apartment, fueled by nothing but caffeine and the naive belief that brilliance would be rewarded. The stock ticker at the bottom of the live stream showed Nexus Technologies' share price climbing steadily as Mitchell spoke. Each percentage point represented millions of dollars flowing into the company's coffers, built on the foundation of Marcus's stolen innovation. A notification chimed on his computer. Another email. Marcus's stomach clenched as he recognized the sender. HR. Subject, Senior Developer Position, Application Status. Dear Marcus, thank you for your interest in the Senior Developer position. After careful consideration, we have decided to move forward with another candidate who better fits our current team dynamics and long-term strategic vision. We encourage you to continue developing your skills and consider applying for future opportunities. Best regards, Human Resources Department. Marcus stared at the email, the words blurring as his vision tunneled. 12 years. 12 years of dedication, innovation, and increasingly hollow promises of advancement. The other candidate was probably some fresh-faced MBA with half his technical skills, but twice his political acumen. He minimized the live stream and pulled up an internal document he'd bookmarked weeks ago, the quarterly revenue report. His fingers moved mechanically across the keyboard as he navigated to the AI division's performance metrics. There it was, buried in corporate euphemisms and technical jargon. His algorithm had generated $3 billion in revenue over the past 18 months. $3 billion. His recognition for this contribution? A standard performance bonus of $5,000 and a company mug with the Nexus logo. Thompson! Marcus flinched and spun his chair around. David Chen, the chief technology officer, stood behind him with his characteristic predatory smile. At 45, Chen had cultivated the perfect image of a tech visionary. Designer jeans, expensive sneakers, and a casual confidence that came from never having to write a line of code himself. I see you're watching Mitchell's presentation, Chen said, glancing at Marcus's monitor. Inspiring stuff, isn't it? Really shows what we can accomplish when we work as a team. The word team hit Marcus like a slap. That's my algorithm, he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the hum of servers and keyboard clicks around them. Chen's smile never wavered. Is it? I seem to remember that being a collaborative effort. You know how these things develop? Ideas flow back and forth, everyone contributes. That's the beauty of working at a place like Nexus. Individual contributions become part of something bigger. Marcus felt something cold and sharp crystallizing in his chest. This was it. The moment. He'd been avoiding for months. The final confirmation that his contributions would always be absorbed into the corporate machine, credited to executives who'd never touched a keyboard except to check their stock options. I have the original code, Marcus said, his voice gaining strength. Timestamps, version control history, everything. My personal commits from before it ever touched the company servers. Chen's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the practiced warmth cooling by a few degrees. Marcus, I'm going to give you some friendly advice. This kind of thinking, this possessiveness over collaborative work, it's not healthy. It's not how successful companies operate. You need to think about what's best for your career here. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Marcus had seen this dance before with other employees who'd pushed too hard for recognition. They either learned to smile and nod, or they found themselves restructured out of the company with NDAs that neutered any chance of going public. Of course, Marcus replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. You're right. Team effort. Chen clapped him on the shoulder with manufactured camaraderie. That's the spirit. Keep that collaborative mindset and you'll go far here. He paused, his hand still resting on Marcus's shoulder like a weight. Speaking of which, I'll need you to document your current projects thoroughly. We're reorganizing some of the development workflows. Marcus nodded, understanding the subtext perfectly. They wanted him to hand over his latest innovations before they found a reason to let him go. The pattern was always the same. Extract the valuable intellectual property, then eliminate the loose end who might make uncomfortable claims about ownership. After Chen walked away, Marcus sat motionless for several minutes, staring at his reflection in the black computer screen. The face looking back at him seemed older than his 34 years, worn down by compromise and broken promises. When had he become this person? When had he stopped fighting? A memory surfaced unbidden. His first day at Nexus Technologies, fresh out of MIT with a head full of dreams and algorithms. He'd been so eager to change the world, convinced that his technical brilliance would be enough to earn respect and recognition. David Chen had been the one to give him the tour, painting pictures of innovation and collaboration that seemed impossibly bright. We're not just a company, Chen had said back then, his enthusiasm seemingly genuine. We're a family of innovators. Your ideas matter here, Marcus. This is where brilliant minds come to build the future. What a fool he'd been to believe it. Marcus pulled up a secure terminal and began typing commands with practiced efficiency. If Nexus wanted documentation of his current projects, he'd give them exactly that. But first, he needed to understand their security infrastructure better. His fingers moved across the keyboard with increasing urgency as he probed network configurations, analyzed access logs, and mapped the digital architecture that had swallowed his life's work. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found himself sketching diagrams in the margins of a notebook, not the documentation Chen had requested, but something far more dangerous. Network topologies, security vulnerabilities, the digital equivalent of a building's structural weaknesses. An idea began forming. In the back of his mind, dark and seductive in its elegance, if the company wanted to steal his innovations, perhaps it was time they learned what it felt like to lose something precious. If traditional channels of justice had failed him, maybe it was time to create his own form of accountability. The livestream had ended hours ago, but Marcus could still hear Mitchell's voice echoing in his head. Our team has spent years developing this groundbreaking technology. The lie burned like acid in his throat, fueling something that had been building inside him for months. As the office began to empty around him, Marcus remained at his desk, the notebook full of architectural sketches growing heavier in his hands. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with quarterly revenue targets or performance reviews. They wanted to play games with intellectual property? Fine. But this time, the rules would be different. This time, he would be the one writing the code that mattered. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a text from his sister Sarah. "Coffee this weekend? You've seemed distant lately, and I'm worried about you." Marcus deleted the message without responding. Some conversations would have to wait until after he'd settled his accounts with Nexus Technologies. The old Marcus, the one who believed in playing by the rules, was already becoming a memory. What emerged in his place would be something far more dangerous, a brilliant mind finally freed from the constraints of conscience and collaboration. He closed the notebook and locked it in his desk drawer. Tomorrow, he would begin reaching out to people who understood what it meant to fight a system that devoured its creators. People like Jennifer Martinez, the former engineer who'd tried to expose Nexus years ago and paid the price for her integrity. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus finally gathered his things to leave. In the reflection of his monitor, he caught a glimpse of his own eyes, and for the first time in months, he saw something that resembled hope. Dark, twisted hope, but hope nonetheless. The war for his stolen future was about to begin. The war for his stolen future was about to begin. Marcus felt the weight of that decision settling over him like a shroud as he walked through the Nexus Technologies parking garage, his footsteps echoing off concrete walls. By morning, he would have made contact with the one person who might understand the true scope of what he was contemplating. Finding Jennifer Martinez hadn't been difficult. A few carefully worded searches through professional networking sites and archived news articles had revealed her current location. What surprised Marcus was how completely she'd vanished from the tech industry. 5 years ago, she'd been a rising star at Nexus, a lead engineer with 3 patents to her name and a reputation for innovative thinking. Now she worked as a freelance consultant for small nonprofits, her LinkedIn profile a shadow of its former glory. The coffee shop she'd chosen for their meeting sat in Oakland's industrial district, far enough from Silicon Valley's gleaming towers to avoid any chance encounters with former colleagues. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, ordering a black coffee and selecting a corner table with clear sightlines to both entrances. Old habits from his MIT cybersecurity courses died hard. Jennifer Martinez entered at exactly 2 p.m., scanning the room with the practiced wariness of someone who'd learned to expect surveillance. She was smaller than Marcus had expected from her old corporate headshots, her dark hair streaked with premature gray and her clothes chosen more for anonymity than style. When their eyes met across the cafe, he saw a flicker of recognition followed immediately by resignation. "Marcus Thompson," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Her voice carried the hint of an accent that hadn't been present in the old video interviews he'd found online. "I wondered when someone like you would reach out." "Someone like me?" Jennifer's smile was bitter. Someone brilliant enough to see the pattern, but still naive enough to think they can fight it. She ordered a tea from the passing waitress, then leaned forward. "How long have you been at Nexus?" 12 years. "And how many of your innovations have they stolen?" The directness of the question caught Marcus off guard. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I've been researching what happened to you, and I think— "You think what? That I was some kind of martyr for intellectual property rights?" Jennifer's laugh was harsh. "Let me save you some time, Marcus. I know exactly why you're here. Your algorithm, the one Mitchell presented yesterday, it was originally yours, wasn't it?" Marcus felt his carefully prepared speech evaporating. "You watched the live stream?" "I watch all of them. Every presentation, every product launch, every announcement where they parade stolen work as corporate innovation. Jennifer's hands, wrapped around her teacup like she was seeking warmth. It's a compulsion, I suppose, like picking at a wound that won't heal. The waitress refilled Marcus's coffee, and Jennifer waited until they were alone again before continuing. The algorithm they're crediting to their revolutionary AI team, I can see your fingerprints all over it. The mathematical elegance, the efficiency optimizations. It has your signature written all over it. How can you know that? Jennifer reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet, its screen cracked but functional. Because I've been documenting their theft operation for 5 years. Every stolen project, every appropriated innovation, every brilliant mind they've chewed up and spat out. She swiped through folders filled with documents, code samples, and what looked like surveillance photos. Your algorithm isn't the first, Marcus. It won't be the last. The tablet screen showed a spreadsheet with hundreds of entries, names, dates, project descriptions, and current status. Marcus recognized several of the names as former colleagues who'd left the company under mysterious circumstances. This is comprehensive, Marcus said, scrolling through the data. Obsessive is probably a better word. Jennifer's voice carried the weight of someone who'd spent years carrying an impossible burden. When I first discovered what they were doing, I thought documentation would be enough. Evidence, proof. I was going to take it to the media, to the authorities, to anyone who would listen. What happened? Jennifer's expression darkened. David Chen happened. He's not just the CTO, Marcus. He's the architect of their entire theft operation. He's turned intellectual property appropriation into a science. They identify promising employee projects through code reviews and internal presentations. Then they use a combination of legal intimidation, career manipulation, and strategic reassignments to separate creators from their work. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The documentation request. Chen asked me to document all my current projects thoroughly. Phase 1 of the extraction process. They'll use those documents to reverse engineer your work, then find ways to implement it through other teams. By the time it reaches production, your original contributions will be buried under layers of collaborative development and corporate restructuring. The tablet showed a flowchart that looked like something from a military operation, systematic, methodical, and devastatingly effective. Marcus recognized his own situation in every step of the process. When I tried to go public, Jennifer continued, they were ready for me. Suddenly, my performance reviews became problematic. My access to critical systems was restricted for security reasons. Other employees were warned that I was becoming unstable, possibly dangerous to the company's intellectual property. They destroyed your credibility. They destroyed everything. Jennifer's voice was barely above a whisper. My reputation, my career, my relationships. The technology press painted me as a disgruntled employee with delusions of persecution. The legal system sided with Nexus. Their army of lawyers made sure of that. And the other victims? They were too scared to come forward, too worried about their own careers to support someone who was already branded as unreliable. Marcus stared at the documentation on the tablet, seeing 15 years of systematic theft laid out with clinical precision. Why are you showing me this? Because I see something in your eyes that I recognize, the same look I had 5 years ago, the belief that truth and justice matter more than corporate power structures. Jennifer's gaze was steady, unflinching. I'm showing you this because I want you to understand what you're really up against. This isn't just about your algorithm, Marcus. It's about a machine designed to consume innovation and excrete profit while leaving the creators as empty shells. She reached across the table and closed the tablet. I also want you to understand the cost of fighting that machine. Not just professionally, personally. The weight of carrying this knowledge, of seeing the pattern everywhere, of knowing that brilliant minds are being systematically exploited while the world celebrates the thieves. Marcus felt something cold settling in his stomach. Are you trying to talk me out of taking action? I'm trying to make sure you understand what action really means. Jennifer leaned back in her chair. Legal channels failed me. Media exposure failed me. Working within the system failed me. The only thing that accomplished anything was the fear I saw in Chen's eyes when he realized how much I knew about their operation. Fear? For exactly 36 hours, David Chen was genuinely afraid that his carefully constructed theft operation might be exposed. In those 36 hours, I had real power over him. It was the only time in 5 years that I felt like I'd accomplished something meaningful. Jennifer gathered her things, preparing to leave. If you're determined to fight them, Marcus, don't make the mistake I made. Don't try to work within systems they control. Don't expect justice from institutions they've already corrupted. She paused at the edge of the table. And don't expect to walk away from this unchanged. Whatever you're planning, whatever action you think will balance the scales, it will cost you more than you're prepared to pay. As she stood to leave, Jennifer placed a small USB drive on the table. Everything I've collected is on there. Names, dates, documentation, contact information for other victims. Consider it my contribution to whatever war you're planning to wage. Marcus watched her walk away, the USB drive feeling impossibly heavy in his palm. Through the cafe window, he could see the distant gleam of Silicon Valley's towers, monuments to innovation built on a foundation of stolen dreams. For the first time since yesterday's live stream, Marcus smiled. But it wasn't the expression of someone planning justice. It was the cold, calculating smile of someone who'd just been handed the blueprints to an enemy fortress. For the first time since yesterday's live stream, Marcus smiled. But it wasn't the expression of someone planning justice. It was the cold, calculating smile of someone who'd just been handed the blueprints to an enemy fortress. The USB drive Jennifer had left behind felt warm in his palm as he drove home through the Bay Area traffic, its weight somehow disproportionate to its size. Marcus's apartment in Palo Alto was a study in functional minimalism, expensive rent for a cramped space, but the location kept his commute short and his landlord's questions minimal. The living room doubled as his personal laboratory, equipped with multiple monitors, development servers, and enough processing power to run small corporations. It was here, in the blue glow of LED strips and humming computers, that Marcus would architect his revenge. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. He inserted Jennifer's USB drive with the reverence of someone handling an ancient artifact. The drive contained exactly what she'd promised, a comprehensive database of Nexus Technologies' intellectual property theft spanning 15 years. Names, projects, documentation, and most importantly, the digital forensics Jennifer had painstakingly collected. Her methodical documentation revealed patterns that even Marcus hadn't fully grasped. The scope was staggering. Hundreds of employees had been systematically harvested for their innovations, their work absorbed into Nexus's product portfolio, while they remained trapped in career purgatory. Marcus found himself scrolling through familiar names, colleagues who'd mysteriously left the company, promising engineers who'd been reassigned to dead-end projects, brilliant minds who'd simply vanished from the tech industry entirely. Each entry in Jennifer's database told the same story: identification, extraction, appropriation, elimination. David Chen's machine was more efficient than Marcus had imagined, and more ruthless. The company didn't just steal ideas, it destroyed. The people capable of creating them, ensuring no awkward questions about ownership would surface later. Marcus opened a new development environment and began sketching his response. If Nexus operated like a machine designed to consume and digest innovation, then his virus would be the perfect digital pathogen, something that could infiltrate their systems, identify the stolen work, and expose it while simultaneously destroying the infrastructure that enabled the theft. The first challenge was architecture. Traditional viruses were designed for maximum spread and minimum detection, but Marcus needed something more sophisticated. His creation would need to be intelligent, discriminating between legitimate work and stolen projects. It would need to gather evidence while remaining dormant, then execute its payload with surgical precision. He started with the core detection, algorithm, drawing on his deep knowledge of Nexus's development practices. Every project at the company left digital fingerprints, code comments, commit histories, architectural decisions that reflected individual thinking patterns. Marcus had spent 12 years learning to recognize these signatures, and now he would teach his virus to do the same. Python class project analyzer, def a init g, self, signature, patterns, hashtag, self, theft, indicators, hash, def. Analyze project ownership, self, codebase, metadata. Identify original creator through coding patterns. Compare against known employee assignments. Flag discrepancies between creator and credited team. The code flowed from his fingers with an elegance that reminded him why he'd fallen in love with programming in the first place. This wasn't corporate-mandated functionality or feature requests from marketing departments. This was pure creation, code written with purpose and passion. As the weeks passed, Marcus fell into a routine that balanced his day job with his nocturnal mission. At Nexus, he maintained his facade of compliance, diligently documenting his current projects as Chen had requested, while slowly embedding hidden access points throughout the company's network. His legitimate work provided perfect cover for reconnaissance. Every authorized system access allowed him to map additional vulnerabilities. Every code review session revealed new attack vectors. The virus grew more sophisticated with each iteration. Marcus designed it with multiple modules, each responsible for a different aspect of the operation. The Harvester module would silently collect evidence of intellectual property theft, copying, documents and communications that proved systematic appropriation. The Analyzer would process this information, matching stolen projects with their original creators using the patterns Marcus had identified. The Curator would organize the evidence for maximum impact, preparing detailed reports that would be impossible to dismiss or discredit. And finally, the Destroyer, the module that would eliminate the stolen work itself, corrupting databases and servers with the precision of a surgical strike. Rebecca Walsh noticed his increasing isolation first. "You've been working late every night this week," she observed during one of their increasingly rare conversations. "The Marcus I know would have automated whatever's keeping you here by now." Marcus looked up from his screen, where he'd been refining the virus's network propagation protocols. Rebecca stood in his cubicle doorway, her expression genuinely concerned. At 29, she still carried the optimism that Marcus remembered from his own early days at Nexus. Her medical software project consumed most of her time, but she'd always made an effort to check on colleagues who seemed overwhelmed. "Just trying to stay ahead of the documentation requests," Marcus replied, minimizing his development environment. "You know how thorough Chen likes things to be." Rebecca's frown deepened. "You've been different lately. Distant. Sarah called me yesterday. She's worried about you." The mention of his sister sent a spike of irritation through Marcus. Sarah had been leaving increasingly concerned voicemails, but he'd been avoiding her calls. His transformation from idealistic engineer to digital vigilante wasn't something he could easily explain, especially not to someone whose job involved upholding legal systems he no longer trusted. "I'm fine," Marcus said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. "Are you?" Rebecca moved closer, lowering her voice. "Because honestly, you look like you haven't slept in weeks, and the way you've been staring at David Chen during meetings. It's like you're planning something." The observation was more perceptive than Marcus had expected. He forced himself to smile, drawing on reserves of charm he hadn't accessed in months. "I'm just focused on some personal projects. Nothing dramatic." Rebecca studied his face for a long moment, clearly unconvinced. "Well, if you need someone to talk to, you know where to find me. I'm usually here until midnight working on the diagnostic software anyway." After she left, Marcus returned to his code with renewed urgency. Rebecca's concern was a reminder that his behavior was becoming noticeable, attracting attention he couldn't afford. The virus needed to be completed soon, before his transformation became too obvious to hide. He opened the payload module, the section responsible for the virus's final execution. This was where his creation would transition from passive observer to active destroyer, simultaneously exposing Nexus's crimes while corrupting their stolen assets. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was using the same systematic approach Chen employed, but in reverse, instead of identifying and stealing valuable work, Marcus would identify and destroy it. The targeting algorithm required the most delicate calibration. Too broad, and innocent projects would be caught in the crossfire. Too narrow, and Chen's operation would survive with most of its stolen portfolio intact. Marcus spent hours refining the detection parameters, teaching his virus to distinguish between collaborative development and outright theft. As he worked through another sleepless night, Marcus felt something fundamental shifting inside him. The man who'd started this project seeking justice was disappearing, replaced by someone who saw people as variables in an equation and relationships as potential security vulnerabilities. Rebecca's concern, Sarah's calls, even his own isolation, everything, was becoming subordinate to the elegant solution taking shape on his screens. The virus was nearly complete, its architecture a monument to Marcus's technical brilliance and growing moral blindness. Soon, David Chen and Nexus Technologies would learn what it felt like to lose something precious. But first, Marcus needed to decide exactly how much collateral damage he was willing to accept in pursuit of his digital revenge. Outside his apartment window, Silicon Valley's lights twinkled like stars, each one representing dreams and innovations that had been harvested by companies like Nexus. Marcus returned to his code, the virus growing more sophisticated with every line, every module bringing him closer to a reckoning that would reshape everything. Outside his apartment window, Silicon Valley's lights twinkled like stars, each one representing dreams and innovations that had been harvested by companies like Nexus. Marcus returned to his code, the virus growing more sophisticated with every line, every module bringing him closer to a reckoning that would reshape everything. But as dawn broke over the Bay Area, casting long shadows across his cluttered workspace, an email notification shattered his concentration. The subject line made his blood run cold. Rebecca Walsh, Project Phoenix Medical Diagnostics, Internal. Review required. Marcus's finger hovered over the mouse as he opened the message from David Chen's assistant. The email was routine corporate bureaucracy, a request for documentation and code review of Rebecca's medical software project. But Marcus recognized the language, the subtle phrasing that marked the beginning of Nexus Technologies' appropriation. Process. Rebecca's breakthrough diagnostic software was about to become the company's latest theft. He minimized his virus development environment and pulled up Rebecca's project files through his elevated system access. What he found there made his stomach clench with a mixture of admiration and horror. Rebecca's software wasn't just innovative, it was revolutionary. Her diagnostic algorithms could identify rare genetic disorders in children with 94% accuracy, potentially saving thousands of lives by catching diseases that traditional screening missed. The code was elegant, compassionate in its precision. Every optimization served a higher purpose. Every efficiency improvement meant faster diagnoses for desperate families. Marcus could see Rebecca's heart in every line of code, her genuine desire to heal reflected in variable names like hope, threshold, and life-saving probability. But according to his virus's targeting algorithms, Rebecca's project would be classified as stolen intellectual property and marked for destruction. The detection protocols Marcus had so carefully calibrated couldn't distinguish between Chen's systematic theft and the organic collaboration that had helped Rebecca refine her work. Her project bore the digital fingerprints of multiple contributors: senior, developers who'd provided guidance, system architects who'd optimized performance, database specialists who'd improved data handling. To his virus, it would look exactly like the appropriated projects that filled Jennifer's database. Marcus leaned, back in his chair, the weight of realization crushing down on him. His elegant solution, his digital instrument of justice, would destroy the very kind of work he claimed to be protecting. Rebecca's medical software would become collateral damage in his war against intellectual property theft. He opened a new terminal window and began analyzing the virus's targeting parameters, searching for a way to create exceptions for truly collaborative work. But every modification he attempted introduced new vulnerabilities, new ways for Chen's stolen projects to slip through the net. The binary nature of code offered no room for moral nuance. Either the virus would discriminate precisely enough to preserve innocent work, or it would be too permissive to accomplish its mission. A knock at his door interrupted his spiral of moral calculus. Marcus checked the security camera feed and saw his sister Sarah standing in the hallway, her lawyer's briefcase in one hand and a concerned expression on her face. "Marcus, I know. You're in there," she called through the door. "Your neighbor said you haven't left your apartment in 3 days. Marcus reluctantly opened the door, squinting in the hallway's fluorescent lighting. Sarah took one look at his appearance. Unshaven, wearing the same clothes for days, dark circles under his eyes, and pushed past him into the apartment. "Jesus, Marcus, what's happened to you?" Sarah's voice carried the authority she used in courtrooms, but underneath it was genuine worry. "You look like you haven't slept or eaten in weeks." "I'm fine, Sarah. Just working on some complex problems." Sarah surveyed the apartment, the multiple monitors, the scattered notebooks filled with network diagrams, the empty takeout containers and coffee cups that covered every surface. "This isn't working on problems. This is obsession." She moved closer to his main workstation, where code snippets were still visible on the screens. Marcus quickly minimized the windows, but not before Sarah caught a glimpse of variable names like payload delivery and network infiltration. "Marcus, what exactly are you working on?" The question hung in the air between them. Marcus felt the weight of weeks of isolation, of transformation from idealistic engineer to digital vigilante. He could lie to Rebecca, maintain facades at work, but Sarah had always been able to see through his deceptions. "There are things happening at Nexus," Marcus began slowly. "Systematic theft of employee innovations. People's life work being stolen and rebranded as corporate achievements." Sarah's expression shifted from concern to professional interest. "Are you talking about intellectual property violations? Because if you have evidence, there are legal channels." "Legal channels don't work." Marcus's voice carried a bitterness. That surprised them both. "The system is rigged, Sarah. Companies like Nexus have armies of lawyers and enough money to bury anyone who challenges them. The only justice is the kind you create yourself." The words hung between them like a confession. Sarah stared at her brother, seeing something in his eyes that frightened her. "Marcus, whatever you're planning, stop. This isn't who you are." "Isn't it?" Marcus turned back to his screens, pulling up Jennifer's database of stolen projects. "Look at this, Sarah. 15 years of systematic theft. Hundreds of brilliant minds destroyed by corporate greed. And you want me to file a complaint with HR?" Sarah studied the data, her legal training kicking in as she processed the scope of the evidence. "This is extensive. But Marcus, if this is real, if this documentation is accurate, then you have enough evidence for a massive class action lawsuit. You could destroy them legally." Jennifer Martinez tried that approach 5 years ago. They destroyed her career, discredited her testimony, and buried the evidence under corporate privilege claims. Marcus's voice was flat, emotionless. "The system protects people like David Chen." So, what's your alternative? What are you building? Here? Marcus hesitated, then pulled up his virus architecture on one of the monitors. Sarah studied the code structure, her expression growing increasingly alarmed as she recognized the implications. Marcus, this is malware. You're planning a cyber attack. I'm planning justice. You're planning to become a criminal. Sarah moved between Marcus and his computer. This isn't justice, it's revenge. And it will destroy you along with them. Marcus felt anger flaring, the same cold rage that had sustained him through weeks of development. Easy words from someone who's never had their life's work stolen. You've built your career in a system that rewards merit and hard work. I've spent 12 years watching my innovations make other people rich while I remained invisible. Then leave. Find another company. Build something new. Prove your worth. Somewhere else. And let Chen continue stealing from the next generation of engineers? Let Rebecca's medical software become the latest addition to his trophy case? Marcus gestured toward his screens. She's building something that could save children's lives, Sarah. And in 3 weeks, it'll be credited to David Chen's innovative leadership. Sarah's expression softened as she began to understand the personal stakes. The Rebecca you've mentioned before? Your colleague? My friend. Maybe the last person at Nexus who still believes in the mission. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. And my virus will destroy her work along with everything else. The confession hung between them like a physical weight. Sarah sat down heavily in Marcus's desk chair, processing the moral complexity of her brother's situation. There has to be another way, she said finally. Some solution that doesn't require destroying innocent work. Marcus had been asking himself the same question for days. I've run every scenario, analyzed every possibility. The virus can't distinguish between stolen work and genuine collaboration. It's all or nothing. Then choose nothing. Sarah's voice was firm. Walk away from this, Marcus. Report what you know through proper channels. Help Rebecca protect her work, but don't become the monster you're fighting. Marcus stared at his reflection in the blank monitor, seeing a stranger looking back at him. It might be too late for that, Sarah. I may have already gone too far to turn back. Outside the apartment, the morning sun climbed higher over Silicon Valley, illuminating a world where innovation and theft existed in an uneasy balance. Inside, 2 siblings faced a choice that would define not just Marcus's future, but the lives of everyone caught in the crossfire of his digital war. Outside the apartment, the morning sun climbed higher over Silicon Valley, illuminating a world where innovation and theft existed in an uneasy balance. Inside, 2 siblings faced a choice that would define not just Marcus's future, but the lives of everyone caught in the crossfire of his digital war. But that philosophical moment was shattered by Marcus's phone, buzzing with an emergency alert from Nexus Technologies' security monitoring system. Kevin O'Sullivan had found something. Marcus's blood turned to ice as he read the automated alert. Anomalous code signatures detected in production environment. Immediate investigation required. The timestamp showed the alert had been triggered 23 minutes ago, while he'd been absorbed in his conversation with Sarah. I have to go, Marcus said, already reaching for his jacket. Sarah grabbed his arm. Marcus, whatever's happening at work, it can wait. We need to finish this conversation. No, you don't understand. Marcus pulled up his security monitoring dashboard, showing Kevin O'Sullivan's active investigation into the very network pathways where Marcus had been embedding his virus components. The IT security director is tracking my access patterns. If he finds what I've been building, the implications hung unspoken between them. Discovery would mean immediate termination, criminal charges, and the end of any chance to expose Nexus's theft operation. But it would also mean Rebecca's medical software would be safe, along with every other innocent project that would have become collateral damage. Sarah studied her brother's face, seeing the genuine terror there. Maybe This is the universe giving you a way out. Let him find it, Marcus. Let this end before you cross a line you can't uncross. Marcus was already halfway to the door. You don't know what they'll do to me. Chen has enough evidence to paint me as a disgruntled employee planning corporate sabotage. I'll spend the next decade in federal prison while he continues stealing from people like Rebecca. Then we'll fight it legally. I'll represent you. We'll expose their theft operation through proper channels. There isn't time! Marcus's voice cracked with desperation. Every minute I waste here is another minute Kevin has to trace my digital footprints back to the virus. I need to get to the office and cover my tracks before this goes too far. The drive to Nexus Technologies felt like a descent into hell. Marcus's hands shook on the steering wheel as he ran through scenarios, each one ending with his arrest, or the destruction of everything he'd worked toward. The virus was 90% complete, so close to being the perfect instrument of justice he'd envisioned. But Kevin O'Sullivan's investigation threatened to unravel everything before Marcus could deploy it. The Nexus parking garage was nearly empty at 10 a.m. Most employees were either in meetings or buried deep in their projects. Marcus badged into the building and made his way to the security center, where he could monitor Kevin's investigation through legitimate administrative channels. What he found there made his stomach drop. Kevin wasn't just tracking anomalous code signatures. He was systematically analyzing network access patterns, comparing current activity against historical baselines. The investigation was methodical, thorough, and getting dangerously close to Marcus's hidden viral components. Marcus opened a secure terminal and began frantically covering his digital tracks, erasing log entries and modifying access records. But every change he made created new anomalies for Kevin to investigate. It was like trying to erase footprints. While still walking through snow, each attempt to hide evidence only created more evidence to hide. Thompson! Marcus spun around to find David Chen striding toward him, his expression a mixture of excitement and predatory satisfaction. Perfect timing. I was just about to call you to my office. David, I'm actually in the middle of some urgent debugging. This is more important. Chen's smile had the quality of a shark sensing blood in the water. We've just received some very exciting news. I'm being promoted to CEO-elect, effective immediately. Brian Mitchell is stepping down to focus on his board responsibilities. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Chen's elevation to CEO meant the intellectual property theft operation would expand from systematic to industrial scale. Every protection that had prevented the company from completely consuming its employees' innovations would disappear under Chen's leadership. Congratulations, Marcus managed, his voice sounding hollow even to himself. Thank you. And I want you to know that your contributions haven't gone unnoticed. Chen's hand fell on Marcus's shoulder with familiar weight. In fact, your algorithm architecture is going to be the cornerstone of our new AI initiative. We're going to revolutionize the industry with innovations that represent the best of Nexus Technologies' collaborative development model. The casual appropriation of his work, delivered as if it were a generous gift, sent rage coursing through Marcus's veins. Chen wasn't just stealing his innovations. He was celebrating the theft, turning Marcus's lifework into a monument to corporate parasitism. I've also been reviewing some of the other promising projects in development, Chen continued. Rebecca, Walsh's medical diagnostic software, for instance. Brilliant work. We're going to fast-track it for commercial development under the Nexus Health Division. Marcus felt something snap inside him, a fundamental breaking point that made his previous anger seem quaint by comparison. Rebecca's software, her compassionate, life-saving innovation, was about to become another trophy in Chen's collection of stolen dreams. Actually, David, I should mention that Rebecca and I have been collaborating closely on that project. My contributions to the core algorithms are fairly substantial. It was a lie, but Marcus delivered it with the same casual confidence Chen used when appropriating others' work. If Chen wanted to play games with intellectual property, Marcus would show him what a masterclass performance looked like. Chen's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the predatory smile cooling as he processed the implications. I see. Well, we'll need to review the development history carefully to ensure proper attribution. Of course, I have extensive documentation of my contributions. Code commits, design documents, the works. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. If Chen wanted to steal Rebecca's work, he'd have to acknowledge Marcus's fictional contributions or risk exposure of the appropriation process itself. It was a small victory, but it bought Rebecca some protection while Marcus decided whether to deploy his virus. Excellent, Chen said, his voice carefully neutral. We'll schedule a comprehensive review next week. In the meantime, I'll need you to prepare detailed documentation of all your current projects. The board wants a complete picture of our intellectual assets. After Chen walked away, Marcus returned to his monitoring station with renewed urgency. Kevin O'Sullivan's investigation was closing in on his viral components, but Chen's promotion had changed the calculus entirely. The theft operation wasn't just continuing, it was about to expand exponentially under Chen's leadership. Marcus pulled up his virus development environment and began making final modifications. He added new safeguards for Rebecca's medical software, created bypass protocols for other projects he could identify as genuinely collaborative, and refined the targeting algorithms to focus specifically on Chen's systematic appropriations. But even as he worked, Marcus knew the fundamental moral equation remained unchanged. His virus would destroy innocent work alongside the stolen projects. Rebecca's software might be protected, but dozens of other legitimate innovations would become collateral damage. His phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Working late again tonight on the diagnostic algorithms. The breakthrough we discussed might actually save lives, Marcus. Thanks for believing in the project. Marcus stared at the message, feeling the weight of every choice that had led him to this moment. In a few hours, he would finish his virus and face the ultimate decision: deploy it and accept the collateral damage, or abandon it and watch Chen's theft operation consume another generation of innovators. The afternoon sun streamed through the office windows as Marcus made his final modifications to the virus, each line of code bringing him closer to a point of no return. Outside, Silicon Valley buzzed with the energy of innovation and ambition, unaware that one man's decision would soon reshape the landscape of digital justice forever. The afternoon sun streamed through the office windows as Marcus made his final modifications to the virus, each line of code bringing him closer to a point of no return. Outside, Silicon Valley buzzed with the energy of innovation and ambition, unaware that one man's decision would soon reshape the landscape of digital justice forever. But as the clock approached 6 p.m., Marcus knew he could delay no longer. Kevin O'Sullivan's investigation was closing in, and Chen's promotion had made the moral calculus brutally clear. Marcus opened his resignation letter template and began typing with methodical precision. Each word was carefully chosen, each sentence crafted to trigger the virus's activation sequence when opened by David Chen. The letter itself was a masterpiece of understated professionalism, giving no hint of the digital weapon embedded in its metadata. Dear Mr. Chen, please accept this letter as my formal resignation from Nexus Technologies, effective 2 weeks from today's date. After 12 years with the company, I have decided to pursue new opportunities that better align with my personal and professional goals. I am grateful for the experiences and knowledge I have gained during my tenure here. The collaborative environment and innovative projects have contributed significantly to my growth as a software engineer. I will ensure a smooth transition of my current responsibilities and am committed to completing any outstanding deliverables during my notice period. Sincerely, Marcus Thompson. Hidden within the document's digital structure, nested in image metadata, and font encoding, lay the trigger code that would unleash months of careful preparation. The virus would remain dormant until Chen opened the file, then begin its systematic infiltration of Nexus Technologies' network. Marcus saved the letter to a secure partition and began the process of embedding it with his viral payload. The Process took nearly an hour. Each module had to be carefully integrated, every trigger mechanism tested to ensure flawless execution. When he finally finished, the resignation letter appeared identical to any other corporate document, but contained the digital equivalent of a nuclear weapon. As he prepared to send the email, Marcus's phone rang. Rebecca's contact photo appeared on the screen, a candid shot from the company holiday party where she was laughing at something he'd said, her eyes bright with the kind of optimism Marcus barely remembered feeling. "Hey Marcus, are you still in the office?" Rebecca's voice carried exhaustion, but also excitement. "I just had a breakthrough with the diagnostic algorithms. The accuracy rate is now up to 96.7%. Can you believe it?" Marcus felt his heart clench. "That's incredible, Rebecca. You should be proud." "I couldn't have done it without your encouragement these past few months. I know you've been dealing with your own challenges, but you always made time to listen to my ideas." There was a pause. Then Rebecca's voice became more serious. "Marcus, are you okay? You've seemed different lately. Distant." "I'm fine. Just tired." "Well, I'm ordering Chinese food for dinner since I'll be here until midnight running validation tests. Want to join me? We could celebrate the breakthrough, and maybe you could tell me what's really been bothering you." Marcus stared at his resignation letter on the screen, the cursor hovering over the send button. Rebecca was less than 50 feet away, working late into the night on software that could revolutionize pediatric diagnostics, completely unaware that her colleague was about to trigger a digital apocalypse. "Marcus? You still there?" "Yeah, I'm here." "Actually, Rebecca, I need to ask you something. Have you been backing up your medical software? Like storing copies outside the company servers?" "Backing up? Why would I—" "Marcus, is there something wrong with the network?" Marcus felt the weight of the moment crushing down on him. He could warn her directly, tell her to copy everything to external storage immediately. But that would require explaining why her work was in danger, and any explanation would reveal his plans. "Just good practice," he said finally. "You never know when hardware might fail." "I suppose you're right. The thought of losing months of work is terrifying." Rebecca's voice carried a note of genuine fear. "I'll make some backups tomorrow morning. Thanks for the reminder." After she hung up, Marcus sat in the empty office surrounded by the hum of servers and the distant sound of traffic. Through the window, he could see lights coming on in apartments and houses across the Bay Area, families gathering for dinner, children doing homework, couples settling in for quiet evenings together. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that a few lines of code were about to shatter the carefully constructed facade of one of Silicon Valley's most respected companies. Marcus opened his email client and attached the resignation letter. David Chen's email address appeared in the recipient field, waiting for Marcus to take the final step. His finger hovered over the send button as he contemplated the irreversible nature of what he was about to do. Once sent, the virus would begin its work immediately. Within hours, it would have penetrated every corner of Nexus Technologies' network, cataloging evidence of intellectual property theft while preparing to destroy the infrastructure that enabled it. There would be no way to stop it, no method to recall it once deployment began. Marcus thought about Jennifer Martinez, broken by her failed attempt at justice. He thought about David Chen's predatory smile as he announced his promotion. He thought about Rebecca's medical software and the children whose lives it might save. He thought about 15 years of systematic theft documented in Jennifer's database. At 6:47 p.m., Marcus clicked send. The email disappeared from his outbox with a soft chime, carrying with it months of preparation and rage. Marcus watched it upload to the mail server, knowing that somewhere in the building's executive wing, David Chen was probably still in meetings, unaware that a digital time bomb was waiting in his inbox. Marcus gathered his personal belongings, methodically. A coffee mug Sarah had given him for Christmas. A small plant Rebecca had insisted would brighten his cubicle. a framed photo from his MIT graduation. The items fit easily in a cardboard box, a surprisingly small collection for 12 years of his life. As he walked through the office toward the elevator, Marcus passed Rebecca's cubicle. She was bent over her keyboard, completely absorbed in code that could help diagnose rare genetic disorders in children. Her medical software glowed on multiple monitors, elegant algorithms pulsing with the rhythm of genuine innovation. For a moment, Marcus considered stopping, warning her, finding some way to protect her work from what was coming. But the virus was already propagating through the network, its targeting algorithms analyzing every project for signs of intellectual property theft. Rebecca's software bore the collaborative fingerprints that would mark it for destruction, and there was nothing Marcus could do to change that now. "Working late again?" Marcus said, pausing at her cubicle entrance. Rebecca looked up, smiling despite her exhaustion. "You know how it is. When you're on the verge of something important, sleep becomes optional." She gestured at her screens. "I think we're really going to help people with this, Marcus. Real families dealing with impossible diagnoses." "I'm sure you will," Marcus replied, the words feeling like lead in his throat. "Are you heading home? You look tired." Marcus shifted the box in his arms. "Yeah, I think I'm done here for today." "See you tomorrow," Rebecca called as he walked away. Marcus didn't respond. Tomorrow, Rebecca would discover that her life's work had been corrupted beyond repair, along with dozens of other projects caught in the crossfire of his digital war. She would learn that the colleague she'd trusted, the mentor she'd confided in, had been the architect of her professional destruction. The elevator carried Marcus down through the building's floors, each level taking him further from the life he'd built and closer to an uncertain future. When the doors opened in the parking garage, Marcus felt the weight of what he'd set in, motion settling over him like a shroud. Somewhere above him, David Chen was probably still in meetings, discussing quarterly projections and market strategies. In a few hours, when he returned to his office and opened his email, Chen would trigger the beginning of the end for Nexus Technologies' carefully constructed empire of stolen innovation. Marcus drove home through the evening traffic, knowing he might never return to the building where he'd spent 12 years of his life. The virus was active now, spreading through networks and servers like digital wildfire, and there was no force on Earth that could stop it from completing its mission. The war he'd declared on corporate theft had finally begun. Marcus drove home through the evening traffic, knowing he might never return to the building where he'd spent 12 years of his life. But as he sat in his apartment watching news feeds and monitoring network traffic, he realized the true weight of his actions was only beginning to unfold. At 9:23 p.m., his phone buzzed with an encrypted message from an unknown number. "The ghost is in the machine. We need to talk. K.O." Kevin O'Sullivan had found the virus. Marcus's blood ran cold as he processed the implications. Kevin wasn't just Nexus Technologies' IT security director, he was one of the most respected cybersecurity professionals in Silicon Valley. If anyone could trace the virus back to its source, it would be him. But the message's tone suggested something unexpected. Kevin wasn't sounding an alarm or calling for Marcus's arrest. A second message arrived minutes later. "Coffee shop on University Avenue, corner of Forest. 1 hour. Come alone." Marcus stared at his phone, weighing his options. Meeting Kevin could be a trap, a way to gather evidence for criminal prosecution. But the encrypted communication and neutral location suggested something else entirely. Kevin had discovered the virus but chosen to reach out privately rather than alert company security. The drive to Palo Alto felt surreal, like moving through a dream where familiar landmarks had taken on ominous significance. Marcus arrived at the coffee shop early, selecting a table with clear sightlines and multiple exit routes. Old habits from his MIT cybersecurity training felt relevant again after years of corporate compliance. Kevin O'Sullivan entered at exactly 10:30 p.m., scanning the room with the practiced awareness of someone accustomed to digital threats manifesting in physical space. He was smaller than Marcus had expected from their brief office interactions, a wiry man in his late 30s with intelligent eyes and the kind of focused intensity that came from spending years hunting sophisticated adversaries. "Marcus Thompson," Kevin said, sliding into the seat across from him. "I have to admit, your virus is elegant, sophisticated enough to evade our standard detection protocols, intelligent enough to discriminate between different types of network traffic. The architecture is genuinely impressive." Marcus felt his carefully prepared denials evaporating. "Kevin, I don't know what you're talking about. Please." Kevin pulled out a tablet and showed Marcus a network traffic analysis that mapped the virus's propagation patterns with surgical precision. "I've been tracking anomalous code signatures for 3 days. The digital forensics lead directly back to your access credentials, your coding patterns, even your preferred variable naming conventions." The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Marcus had been caught by someone who understood digital architecture as well as he did. "So what happens now? You turn me in?" Kevin was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus's face with the intensity of someone making a crucial decision. "That depends on what I found when I analyzed your virus's payload." "What do you mean?" Kevin swiped through files on his tablet, revealing the virus's core functions, the modules designed to identify stolen intellectual property, the evidence-gathering algorithms, the systematic documentation of corporate theft. Your virus isn't just malware, Marcus. It's a digital investigative tool. And what it's uncovered about Nexus Technologies is disturbing. Marcus felt a flicker of hope mixed with confusion. "You've seen the evidence?" 15 years of systematic intellectual property theft, hundreds of stolen projects, a corporate culture built on appropriating employee innovations and destroying the careers of anyone who objects. Kevin's voice carried a mixture of disgust and professional admiration. "Your virus has assembled the most comprehensive documentation of corporate malfeasance I've ever seen. Then you understand why I built it." Kevin leaned forward, his expression serious. "I understand the motivation. What I'm struggling with is the execution. Your virus isn't just exposing theft. It's designed to destroy everything, including legitimate work that happens to bear collaborative fingerprints." The moral complexity Marcus had been avoiding suddenly crashed down on him. "I know. I tried to create safeguards, but the targeting algorithms can't distinguish between genuine collaboration and systematic appropriation. The binary nature of code doesn't allow for ethical nuance." Which brings us to our current situation. Kevin showed Marcus real-time network monitoring data. "Your virus is currently in phase 2 of its execution cycle. It's finished gathering evidence and is beginning selective data corruption. Based on your code architecture, I estimate we have approximately 6 hours before it enters the final phase and begins mass data destruction." Marcus stared at the monitoring data, watching his creation systematically work through Nexus Technologies servers. Projects were being analyzed, classified, and marked for either preservation or destruction based on algorithms he'd written in moments of rage and moral certainty. 6 hours to do what? To decide whether we stop it or help it finish the job. Kevin's words hung in the air between them like a challenge. "I've spent my career protecting corporate networks from external threats. But your virus has shown me that sometimes the biggest threat comes from within, systematic corruption that destroys innovation while hiding behind legal protections." Marcus felt his worldview shifting as he processed Kevin's words. "You're talking about letting the virus complete its mission?" "I'm talking about making sure it targets the right systems." Kevin pulled up the virus's targeting algorithms on his tablet. "Your creation is sophisticated, but it lacks the insider knowledge needed to distinguish between Chen's theft operation and legitimate collaborative development. It needs someone with administrative access to guide its execution." The implications were staggering. Kevin wasn't just offering to avoid prosecuting Marcus. He was proposing to actively assist in the digital attack on their own company. "Why?" Marcus asked. "Why would you risk your career to help me?" Kevin's expression darkened. "Because I've watched David Chen steal ideas from brilliant engineers for 5 years. I've seen promising careers destroyed, innovative projects appropriated, and genuine collaboration perverted into systematic theft. I became IT security director thinking I could protect Nexus's intellectual assets. Instead, I've been an unwitting accomplice to their theft." He swiped to another file, a personal folder filled with documentation Kevin had been quietly collecting. "I've been building my own case against Chen's operation for 2 years. Legal evidence, witness testimonies, financial records showing the revenue generated by stolen projects. But every time I've tried to escalate through proper channels, the investigation gets buried under corporate privilege claims." Marcus studied Kevin's documentation, seeing his own frustrations reflected in someone else's methodical analysis. "So you're proposing we work together?" "I'm proposing we make sure your virus accomplishes what legal channels couldn't." Kevin closed the tablet and leaned back in his chair. "Your targeting algorithms need refinement to avoid destroying innocent work. I can provide that guidance. In exchange, we ensure that Chen's theft operation gets exposed with maximum impact." Outside the coffee shop, Palo Alto's streets buzzed with late-night energy. Students from Stanford walking between study sessions, tech workers grabbing dinner. After long days, entrepreneurs nursing ideas over endless cups of coffee. Normal people pursuing normal dreams, unaware that 2 men sitting in a corner booth were deciding the fate of one of Silicon Valley's most prominent companies. "What about Rebecca's medical software?" Marcus asked, the question that had been haunting him for days. Kevin pulled up the virus's current analysis of Rebecca's project. "Already protected. I've modified your algorithms to recognize her work as genuinely collaborative, rather than systematically appropriated. Her diagnostic software will survive the purge." Marcus felt a weight lifting from his shoulders, the first relief he'd experienced since deploying the virus. "And the other innocent projects? We'll save what we can. But Marcus, you need to understand. Some collateral damage is inevitable. The choice isn't between perfect justice and moral compromise. It's between allowing Chen's theft operation to continue indefinitely or accepting that meaningful change requires difficult sacrifices." As the clock approached midnight, Marcus found himself facing a choice he'd never anticipated. His virus was already active, already gathering evidence and preparing for mass destruction. But with Kevin's help, that destruction could be guided, refined, turned into something resembling justice rather than revenge. The war against corporate theft was about to enter its most crucial phase. The war against corporate theft was about to enter its most crucial phase. As the clock approached midnight, Marcus found himself working alongside Kevin O'Sullivan in an unlikely partnership that would have been unthinkable just hours earlier. They had moved to Kevin's apartment, a fortress of digital security equipment. That made Marcus's home setup look primitive, where they could monitor and guide the virus's final phase without detection. "Phase 3 initiates in 47 minutes, Kevin announced, his fingers flying across multiple keyboards as he refined the virus's targeting parameters. "Once it begins mass data destruction, there's no stopping it. We need to finalize the protection protocols now." Marcus watched the virus's real-time analysis scrolling across multiple monitors, project files being categorized, ownership patterns being mapped, evidence being compiled into devastating reports. The scope of Nexus Technologies' theft operation was even more extensive than Jennifer Martinez's database had suggested. Entire departments had been built on appropriated innovations, with David Chen's systematic theft reaching into every corner of the company. "Look at this," Kevin said, pulling up a financial analysis the virus had generated. "Chen's stolen projects have generated over $8 billion in revenue over the past decade. $8 billion. and the original creators received standard salaries while their innovations made executives rich. Marcus felt sick as he scrolled through the data. Names he recognized, brilliant engineers who'd mysteriously left the company, promising researchers who'd been reassigned to dead-end projects, innovative thinkers who'd simply vanished from the tech industry. All casualties of Chen's systematic appropriation machine. The media outlets are ready, Kevin continued, showing Marcus a list of tech journalists and bloggers who would receive the evidence simultaneously. TechCrunch, Wired, Ars Technica, plus several investigative reporters who specialize in corporate malfeasance. The story will be impossible to suppress once it breaks. At 12:47 a.m., the virus entered its final phase. Marcus and Kevin watched in real time as their digital weapon began its systematic destruction of Nexus Technologies' stolen intellectual property. Server farms across Silicon Valley hummed with unprecedented activity as the virus executed its mission with surgical precision. Stolen algorithms corrupted into uselessness. Appropriated software modules dissolved into gibberish. 15 years of systematic theft began unraveling with mathematical efficiency. But the virus wasn't just destroying, it was simultaneously broadcasting. Evidence files flooded out to media outlets, regulatory agencies, and social media platforms. Internal emails revealing Chen's theft operation appeared on tech blogs. Financial documents showing revenue from stolen projects landed in investigative reporters' inboxes. Employee testimonies about appropriated work spread across Twitter and LinkedIn. It's working, Kevin breathed, watching news alerts begin appearing on his phone. The story's breaking everywhere. Marcus's laptop chimed with the first media notification. Breaking. Massive IP theft scandal rocks Silicon Valley giant. Within minutes, more headlines appeared across tech news sites. Nexus Technologies accused of systematic innovation theft. Corporate espionage, how one company built empire on stolen ideas. The Great Tech Heist, 15 years of appropriated. Innovation exposed. The virus's media strategy was devastatingly effective. Rather than releasing all evidence at once, it had orchestrated a coordinated information cascade designed for maximum impact. Each news outlet received different pieces of the puzzle, forcing them to report independently while building toward the same conclusion. Nexus Technologies was a corporate parasite that had built its success on stolen innovations. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Marcus, are you seeing the news about Nexus? Someone's hacked our systems and released documents claiming the company steals employee ideas. This is insane. Are you okay? The irony of Rebecca's concern for his well-being, while unaware he was the architect of the digital apocalypse, hit Marcus like a physical blow. He started to type a response, then stopped. What could he possibly say? On the monitors, the virus continued its systematic execution. David Chen's personal files were being corrupted, his appropriated project portfolio dissolving into digital chaos. Brian Mitchell's strategic presentations, built on stolen innovations, vanished from company servers. The entire infrastructure that had enabled 15 years of intellectual property theft was being methodically destroyed. But something unexpected was happening in the data streams Kevin was monitoring. Marcus, look at this. The virus is adapting its targeting parameters in real time based on employee response patterns. Marcus studied the network traffic analysis. As news of the scandal broke, Nexus employees were frantically trying to back up their work. The virus was analyzing these backup attempts, using them to further refine its understanding of which projects were genuinely collaborative versus systematically appropriated. It's learning, Marcus realized. The panic responses are revealing the true ownership patterns. Employees are trying to save their own work while ignoring projects they know were stolen. The adaptive behavior was something Marcus hadn't explicitly programmed, but which had emerged from the virus's machine learning algorithms. His creation was evolving, becoming more sophisticated in its ethical discrimination as it processed real-world behavioral data. Kevin's secure communication channels exploded with activity as news organizations sought comment from Nexus Technologies. The company's PR department was overwhelmed, issuing contradictory statements as executives tried to understand the scope of the attack. Stock prices began plummeting in after-hours trading as investors processed the implications of the revelations. "Chen's trying to reach you," Kevin said, showing Marcus an emergency contact attempt from the CTO's office. 23 missed calls in the past hour. Marcus ignored the attempts. Chen could burn down Silicon Valley for all he cared. The virus had already accomplished its primary mission. The evidence was public, the theft operation was exposed, and the infrastructure that enabled systematic appropriation was being systematically destroyed. But as dawn approached, Marcus began to understand the true scope of what he'd unleashed. The virus wasn't just destroying Nexus Technologies, it was reshaping the entire tech industry's understanding of intellectual property theft. Other companies were conducting emergency audits of their own practices, terrified they might become the next target of digital vigilante justice. "Look," Kevin said, pointing to trending topics on social media. Digital justice and IP theft were dominating tech discussions. Engineers across Silicon Valley were sharing their own stories of appropriated work, creating a cascade of revelations that extended far beyond Nexus Technologies. Marcus had intended to destroy one company's theft operation. Instead, he'd triggered an industry-wide reckoning with corporate practices that had been quietly accepted for decades. As the sun rose over Silicon Valley, casting long shadows across a landscape forever changed by a few lines of malicious code, Marcus and Kevin watched the final phase of the virus's execution. Nexus Technologies' stolen intellectual property portfolio had been reduced to digital ash, but the evidence of its crimes would live forever in the public record. The war against corporate theft hadn't just been won, it had fundamentally altered the battlefield itself. But as Marcus stared at news footage of confused employees leaving the Nexus building, he wondered if victory would feel different than the hollow satisfaction currently settling in his chest. The war against corporate theft hadn't just been won, it had fundamentally altered the battlefield itself. But as Marcus stared at news footage of confused employees leaving the Nexus building, he wondered if victory would feel different than the hollow satisfaction currently settling in his chest. 3 weeks had passed since Digital Judgment Day, and the reverberations continued to shake Silicon Valley like aftershocks from a digital earthquake. Marcus sat in his apartment, now under FBI surveillance, watching his own transformation into a folk hero and public enemy simultaneously. Tech blogs hailed him as the digital Robin Hood, who'd exposed corporate theft on an unprecedented scale. Legal analysts debated whether his actions constituted cyber terrorism or justified whistleblowing. Social media movements used his virus attack as a rallying cry for intellectual property reform. The knock on his door came at exactly 3 p.m., just as the FBI agents had scheduled. Marcus opened it to find Rebecca Walsh standing in the hallway, her expression a mixture of betrayal, confusion, and something that might have been admiration. "Hello, Marcus," she said quietly. "May I come in?" Marcus stepped aside, noticing the FBI surveillance van across the street. Rebecca's visit would be recorded, analyzed, and probably used as evidence in his eventual prosecution. But after weeks of isolation, he was desperate for human contact that didn't involve lawyers or federal agents. "I brought your plant," Rebecca said, setting the small succulent on his kitchen counter. "From your cubicle. I thought you might want it back." The gesture was so normal, so considerate, that Marcus felt his carefully constructed emotional defenses cracking. "Thank you. How are you doing? How's the medical software?" Rebecca's laugh was bitter. Gone. Completely corrupted. 18 months of work reduced to digital garbage. She studied Marcus's face, searching for something she might recognize from their former friendship. "Although I hear that wasn't supposed to happen." Kevin O'Sullivan claims there were safeguards to protect my project. But something went wrong. With the targeting algorithms. Marcus felt the weight of guilt crushing down on him. Rebecca, I'm sorry. I never wanted your work to be... Don't. Her voice was sharp. Don't apologize for the collateral damage when you're not sorry for the war itself. I can see it in your eyes, Marcus. You think what you did was justified. The accusation hung between them like an insurmountable wall. Marcus wanted to explain, to make her understand the systematic theft that had driven him to such extremes. But the words felt hollow when confronted with the reality of her destroyed project. You want to know the ironic part? Rebecca continued. My diagnostic software wasn't even completely original. I'd collaborated with dozens of people, database specialists, algorithm experts, medical consultants. It bore exactly the kind of collaborative fingerprints your virus was designed to target. In trying to destroy stolen work, you destroyed exactly the kind of genuine innovation the tech industry should be celebrating. Marcus sank into his desk chair, feeling the full weight of his moral blindness. I thought I could create perfect discrimination between theft and collaboration. I thought code could solve ethical problems that human institutions couldn't. But code doesn't understand context, does it? It can't distinguish between systematic appropriation and organic teamwork. It sees patterns and makes binary decisions. Rebecca moved to his window, looking out at the FBI surveillance van. Just like you did. The comparison stung because it was accurate. Marcus had become as rigid and unforgiving as the algorithms. He'd written, reducing complex human relationships to simple equations of ownership and theft. I've been offered a position at 3 different companies, Rebecca said. Everyone wants to hire the engineer whose work was destroyed by the famous digital vigilante. They think associating with me gives them credibility in the new intellectual property landscape you've created. That's good, isn't it? You're getting recognition. For being a victim. Rebecca's voice carried exhaustion that went deeper than professional disappointment. Not for the innovation itself, but for being collateral damage in your war against corporate theft. Do you understand how that feels, Marcus? To be defined by someone else's vendetta rather than your own achievements? The question forced Marcus to confront something he'd been avoiding for weeks. His viral attack hadn't just exposed corporate theft, it had created new forms of victimization, new categories of professional damage that extended far beyond his intended targets. Marcus's phone buzzed with a news alert. David Chen indicted. On federal computer fraud charges. The notification felt surreal. Chen's prosecution vindicated everything Marcus had believed about Nexus Technologies' theft operation, but the victory felt hollow when measured against the human cost. Are you watching the news coverage? Rebecca asked, noticing the alert. They're calling you everything from a terrorist to a hero. Congressional hearings on intellectual property reform. New legislation to protect employee innovations. You've actually changed the system, Marcus. The question is whether the cost was worth it. Marcus pulled up news coverage on his laptop, showing Rebecca the broader impact of his actions. Dozens of tech companies had implemented new intellectual property protections. Employees across Silicon Valley were speaking out about appropriated work, creating a cascade of revelations that extended far beyond Nexus Technologies. The entire industry was grappling with questions of ownership, collaboration, and creative credit that had been ignored for decades. Look at this, Marcus said, showing her a tech blog post titled, The Thompson Effect: How One Virus Changed Silicon Valley. Engineers are finally getting credit for their innovations. Companies are scrambling to implement fair attribution policies. The systemic theft that destroyed so many careers is finally being addressed. Rebecca studied the coverage, her expression thoughtful. And how many legitimate collaborations will be destroyed by paranoia about intellectual property? Theft? How many innovative partnerships will be avoided because people are terrified of accidentally appropriating someone else's work? The question highlighted something Marcus had been trying to ignore. His actions had created new forms of dysfunction alongside the problems they'd solved. The tech industry's response to his viral attack was creating an environment of suspicion and legal paranoia that might stifle the genuine collaboration that drove innovation. "I keep thinking about Jennifer Martinez," Rebecca continued, "the former Nexus engineer who tried to expose the company's theft operation through legal channels. She visited me last week." Marcus felt his blood pressure spike. "Jennifer contacted you?" "She wanted to understand the human cost of digital vigilante justice. She told me something interesting, that Chen's theft operation would have been exposed eventually through traditional investigative journalism. 3 reporters were already building cases against Nexus when your virus attacked. Your intervention didn't create justice, Marcus. It just accelerated it while adding massive collateral damage." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. All his justifications about failed legal systems and corrupt institutions suddenly seemed hollow. Justice had been coming through legitimate channels. He'd simply been too impatient and too angry to wait for it. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rebecca moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. "Now you face the consequences of playing God with other people's lives. The FBI prosecution, the civil lawsuits, the knowledge that your quest for justice destroyed innocent work alongside the guilty. You wanted to be the hero of your own story, Marcus. But heroes don't get to choose their own casualties." After she left, Marcus sat alone in his apartment, watching news coverage of David Chen's indictment while grappling with the complexity of what he'd accomplished. He'd exposed massive corporate theft and triggered industry-wide reforms. But he'd also destroyed legitimate work, created new forms of professional paranoia, and potentially stifled the collaborative innovation he'd claimed to protect. The war against corporate theft had been won, but victory looked nothing like what Marcus had imagined when he'd first started coding his digital weapon. Justice, it turned out, was far more complicated than any algorithm could capture. 6 months after Digital Judgment Day, Marcus Thompson stood in a federal courthouse in San Jose, accepting responsibility for crimes that had paradoxically made him both a villain and a catalyst for reform. "Mr. Thompson," Judge Patricia Hernandez said, "your actions caused millions of dollars in damage and violated numerous computer fraud statutes. However, the court acknowledges that your disclosures led to the prosecution of systematic corporate theft and industry-wide reforms that protect intellectual property rights." Marcus pleaded guilty to computer fraud charges while testifying about Nexus Technologies' theft operation. His cooperation had been instrumental in securing David Chen's conviction and Brian Mitchell's resignation. The plea agreement included 2 years of supervised release, substantial fines, and community service focused on digital ethics education. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca Walsh waited by the steps. She'd attended every hearing, not as a supporter, but as a reminder of the human cost of his actions. "How does it feel?" she asked as they walked toward the parking garage. "Like the ending to a story I never intended to write," Marcus replied. The weight of legal consequences paled beside the knowledge that his quest for justice had destroyed work that could have saved lives. Rebecca had spent the past months rebuilding her medical diagnostic software from scattered backup notes and fragments. "I got the prototype working again last week. It's not as elegant as the original, but it might still help identify rare genetic disorders." "I'd like to help," Marcus said quietly, "if you'll let me." "Why?" Marcus stopped walking, forcing himself to meet her eyes. "Because I spent so much time thinking about justice that I forgot about repair. I can't undo what I destroyed, but maybe I can help rebuild something better." They worked together over the following months. Marcus's technical expertise combined with Rebecca's medical knowledge and hard-won wisdom about collaborative development. The new diagnostic software was more robust, more carefully documented, and built with protections against both corporate appropriation and digital vigilantism. Jennifer Martinez joined their efforts, contributing her experience with intellectual property law and her database of other engineers whose work had been stolen. What emerged was more than software. It was a model for ethical collaboration that balanced innovation protection with genuine teamwork. Marcus also began working with his sister Sarah on legal frameworks for intellectual property protection. The Thompson Protocol became industry standard, a set of practices for documenting collaborative work that protected both individual contributions and team innovations. The medical software launched 2 years later, credited to the Ethical Innovation Collective, a team that included Rebecca, Marcus, Jennifer, and dozens of other contributors. It successfully identified rare genetic disorders in children, fulfilling Rebecca's original vision while embodying principles of fair attribution. Marcus never fully redeemed himself in his own eyes. Some damage couldn't be repaired, some trust couldn't be rebuilt, but he learned that redemption wasn't about erasing past mistakes. It was about channeling destructive impulses toward constructive purposes. The war against corporate theft continued, but with different weapons: transparency, legal reform, and collaborative models that protected both innovation and innovators. Marcus had discovered that true justice required patience, humility, and the recognition that complex problems demanded nuanced solutions rather than algorithmic absolutes. In the end, his greatest achievement wasn't the virus that exposed corporate theft. It was learning to build rather than destroy. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe. And turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.